Hello all. Considering one of the challenge in SAP Basis area is to face SAP audit for the SCC4 and SE06 transactions. That is basically client auditing and as well as the system auditing part. So to overcome this during the audit process, we go with several manual process where we are capturing all the audit logs and based on that we are maintaining the audit register. So this process require a lot of manual effort, and team is going to follow up with the different people during this Redbook activity, and still there are chances we miss with the required proof to support the client opening and the system opening documents. So to overcome this challenge, we worked on a process and worked on an automation in this area. So for that we just develop one of the custom program. So for that we just start with the demo that how uh, we are going to open the client and how it is being captured during the activity, and how we can present it to the auditor once the audit is going to happen. So let's start with the transaction code. So this is the transactions chat Redbook audit. So once we run this transactions, so it will show us the current client details and what are the client settings at this moment, and as well as all the system setting which is there. So once we are going to open a client based on some request. So that is what we are going to follow the process in an operational part. And once we perform the open and closing operation for the client, the log is going to be registered in this Redbook log register, which we can see from this screen. Okay, so let's start with the client opening part. As we can see at this moment, client is closed, and so let's start with client opening. So as soon as we click on client opening button, we can see the client opening setting which is required for the customer, that it should be automatic recording of changes and changes to repository, and the protection level it should be 0. So once we are going to open a client, we need all the required approved change and as well as the required documentation in terms of firefighter ID if there is anything. So for example, if we are going to open a client 001 as it was closed, so we will use a change request which is already approved in this no record, and the same time as if it's a production environment, we can see. So if we are not filling this information and try to click open, so it will pop us that please fill the approved FFID for the production, and for the non-production put not applicable, because that is based on the scenario or the systems which we are using. So considering the firefighter ID and what could be the approver name for that particular change, so we mentioned that change number, and then for the implementer we can put it, and once we click open, it will just pop us in the open change request. So once we enter in this screen, and if we try to go back, it is not allowing us because we already entered in the client opening change. So we need to maintain the client based on the request. So as we are going to open client 001, so we just need to edit that client, and the setting which we can see on the screen, if it was there, and if we are not maintaining the same setting here, for example, we will try that what is the recommended setting, and if we try to save it, and once we go back, it is not going to allow us further because that setting was not up to date as per the requirement. So we are trying to maintain the same setting, so it is automatic recording of changes and changes to repository client allowed. Protection level is no restriction. So once we save this setting, so client is saved now. We'll just go back, and now we can see we are through with the client opening part, and with the system change options we go in the system setting. So once we move it here, we will see that the setting which we have to put it like modifiable, and there we can maintain the setting for the software component as modifiable, namespace as modifiable. Once we do it, we will save this, and as soon as we save with the system setting, we will go back. As soon as we will go back, the client open audit record updated, so that we can validate in the Redbook log. So here we can see the client for the NPL 001 client was open, and the transaction time or the timestamp which we mentioned, we can see the client setting which was earlier and the system setting, and after client opening the setting was changed and the global setting was also changed, the respective change number, firefighter ID and the approver and the implementer. So all these details got updated here, and the client would be open, and that we can validate on the main screen. Here we can see the client details which got updated, and we can see the system setting which got modifiable. So this is the way we can just validate and get it updated the client, and we can see who made the last changes. As this all details are coming, and with this information it is not going to use the transactions, so we are safe in terms of using those particular transactions. And for example, later on for some time, once we try to close the client, we just run the transactions again, and once we will move it again, it will just ask that what should be the client closing setting it should be. So we will just maintain those client open client close setting here. So for that, again we will look for the client number and the change request, which through which we already opened the client, and then the firefighter ID and the approver and the implementer. And if we mention any of the details and try to put it, so it will ask to fill that information. Without filling that information, it is not moving, so we'll just try to close it. The same process which we have to follow for client closing as well. Here if we can see, if we again going to select any other options as we look for the client opening process, so the same validation is happening here. So it is not going to allow, as client is not correctly maintained. So we just need to close the client based on the current recommended setting. So it would be no changes allowed, and no changes to repository and customization allowed, no overwriting. And once we save the setting, we'll just go back, and as we can see, we are through with the client setting options. Now we just go in the system change options. There we just make the global system setting changed, and it will just make all things non-modifiable. Okay, so we will just go back, and then back we can see the client close audit record updated. So we can validate it in the Redbook log register as well. So we can see here the Redbook ID got updated, client close, client setting before and after, all these details are here. So with this process of validating, if someone is asking us to show us the log which happened, so we can just extract this report from the Redbook log and show it to the auditors. So thank you.